Haiti, various social sectors are on strike against the high crime rates in the country. Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated that the intention of his government is not to occupy Ukrainian territory. And the World Health Organization stated that the number of COVID-19 positive cases reported worldwide showed an increase of 8% over the last week. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada from the TeleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. So now we begin this news brief. In Haiti, several social sectors are on strike against the high crime rates registered in the country. The protesters have blocked some of the main streets in the capital, Port-au-Prince, in protest to demand the release of citizens kidnapped by organized criminal gangs in the Caribbean nation. The strike, which has been going on since March 14th, is supported by the Haitian Medical Association, which has caused the shutdown of hospitals, clinics, and health centers affiliated to that association, both public and private. According to a report released last February by the United Nations Security Council, kidnappings in Haiti have increased 180% in the last year, with 655 cases reported to the police. The number of cases is estimated to be higher, as many go unreported. In Mexico, efforts made by the federal executive in the area of citizen security have not been able to prevent the murder of another journalist. Armando Linares, the director of the news portal Monitor Michoacán, was shot on Tuesday in the town of Zitácuaro in the central west of the country. The official report from the state prosecutor's office, Linares was killed at his home after being shot several times by unknown subjects. The journalist had received and denounced several threats and was killed in his home after being shot by unknown assailants. This is the 8th social communicator murdered in this North American nation so far in 2022, and the second reported from Monitor Michoacán murdered this year. On January 31st, Roberto Toledo died in similar conditions. The organization, Article 19, has demanded that the Special Prosecutor's Office take immediate charge of the case, bearing in mind that impunity surrounding the murder of reporters and press workers in the country exceeds 90%. A few weeks ago, Armando Linares referred to the threats he and his colleagues were receiving, which he said were linked to the Michoacán state officials.
To have exposed corrupt government politicians and corrupt officials today led to the death of one of our comrades. I can't say much. Today, finally, the threats are fulfilled, and one of our comrades lost his life at the hands of 3 people who came and shot him in a cowardly way. We are not armed. We do not carry weapons. Our only defense is a pen, a pencil, a notebook. We regret this fact and we condemn it. There is a name. We know where all this comes from.
In Uruguay, President Luis Lacalle Pou made a statement on the measures to be taken in view of the increase in the price of some basic products. The president specified that not all the actions will be announced at the same time, and they will be differentiated according to each product. Also, he said that he is holding conversations with the ministers of economy, industry, and livestock, as well as with other people linked to the production of basic food products. The head of state made this statement at a time when the quality of life of the Uruguayan population is affected by the inflation reported in the country. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva expressed fears about the possibility of an attack during the electoral campaign. The Petista leader, who will launch his candidacy for the presidency next April, stated that in spite of this concern, he is a person of great faith and believes that the Brazilian people will re-establish democracy. The ex-president assured that he will campaign in the streets to sell his proposals for the country and stressed that he will seek improvements for the Brazilian people. Last month, Lula moved to Sao Paulo at the request of his advisors and leaders of the Workers' Party to provide more protection. On Wednesday, hundreds of public workers protest in front of the Ministry of Economy in Brasilia to demand an emergency wage increase of 19.99% from President Jair Bolsonaro's government, amid rising fuel prices and soaring inflation.
The quality of life of public servants has been affected by inflation, which has directly affected their eating habits, their ability to pay rent, the cost of public transport, both in terms of fares and fuel, which has increased a lot.
Although the administrations that succeeded former President Dilma Rousseff practically funded social housing projects, some of those projects managed to survive, turning former squatters into homeowners. Our correspondent Brian Muir gives us more details.
After the 2016 coup, the Brazilian government cut funding for social housing by over 90%. But some projects, which were approved during the Dilma Rousseff administration, were prepared so well that they've been unable to cancel them. In Caruaru, Pernambuco, one of the last projects authorized by Dilma Rousseff, a self-managed autonomous social movement construction project, nears completion.
This land was abandoned, not performing any social function. We negotiated and didn't get anywhere, so we got 100 people together, occupied the land, and camped on it for 2 years in plastic tarps and plywood shacks.
After years of squatting on this government land, the social movements pressured the federal government to allocate funding for building 139 apartments, with ownership prioritized for women. In exchange for maintaining the land clean and doing some of the construction work themselves, ownership is passed over after 10 years of subsidized installments of around 100 reais per month.
It was mainly women who occupied this land, and from then forwards, we women have been the protagonists, working collectively, organizing the meetings. We always do 99.7% of the work.
The housing movements hope that Brazil's next president will restart the paralyzed national social housing program in a country that has a housing deficit of 5.8 million units. Brian Muir, TeleSUR, Caruaru.
Thank you, Brian, for this report, and we'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated that his intention is not to occupy Ukrainian territory. Putin declared that the appearance of Russian military forces in Kiev and other surrounding cities should not be interpreted as an attempt to occupy the country, since that is not the objective. He has, as the president, indicated that the possibilities of a diplomatic solution with Ukraine were exhausted, so he implemented the launch of a special military operation in response to the aid requested by the Donbass. In this context, the Russian leader asserted that Western leaders are encouraging Ukrainian forces to keep the conflict going by supplying them with weapons, reconnaissance data, military advisors, and mercenaries.
The presence of Russian troops near Kiev and other Ukrainian cities is not connected with the intention to occupy this country. We have no such goal.
And the Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the Western powers are trying to weaken his country and undermine sovereignty.
They simply do not need a strong and sovereign Russia. They will not forgive us neither our independent course or the fact that we are defending our national interest. We remember how they support separatists, terrorists, encourage separatists and bandits in the North Caucasus, just like in the 1990s and early 2000s. Now, once again, they want to repeat the attempt to squeeze us, to put some pressure on us, as they say, to go beyond Mosaic, as people say, to become a weak, dependent country, violate the territorial integrity, dismember Russia, to the best of their interest.
The Swiss government imposed trade and financial sanctions on Belarus and follows similar decisions taken by the European Union. Switzerland will not provide technical assistance or commercial services and stopped the import of wood, rubber, cement, steel and byproducts from Belarus. It also said that as a part of the financial sanctions, Belarus was partially disconnected from the SWIFT system, of which Switzerland is the facilitator of global financial transactions, while the Swiss Federal Council suspended the granting of public funds to trade with Minsk and will not allow transactions with its central bank. In the United States, Joe Biden announced that he will provide more military aid to Ukraine, worth a total of $800 million. The new measure brings the total amount of military assistance provided in 1 week to Ukraine to a total of $1,000 million. This new package alone will provide unprecedented assistance to Ukraine. Joe Biden detailed that the new aid package includes 800 anti-aircraft systems, 9,000 anti-armor systems, 7,000 light weapons such as machine guns and grenade launchers, 20 million rounds of ammunition, as well as drones. The U.S. president commented that at the request of President Volodymyr Zelensky, they will assist Ukraine in acquiring an additional long-range arsenal.
It includes 800 anti-aircraft systems to make sure the Ukrainian military can continue to stop the planes and helicopters that have been attacking their people and to defend their Ukrainian airspace. And at the request of President Zelensky, we have identified and are helping Ukraine acquire additional longer-range anti-aircraft systems and the munitions for those systems.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a speech via video conference on Wednesday to members of the U.S. Congress in the context of the tensions between Kiev and Moscow. Zelensky asked the West to increase the sanctions on some Russian leaders, and he also pled for help, specifically for Ukrainian airspace to be declared a humanitarian no-fly zone. Zelensky called on the U.S. president to be a warrantor of peace, saying that it's a responsibility inherent to his office. This is the second time the Ukrainian president addresses the U.S. Congress, just a few days after that same Congress approved a $13 billion aid package for Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Russian government argues Washington's support of Kiev does not facilitate a resolution of the conflict over the Donbas region. On Wednesday, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization informed the global supply gap resulting from the conflict in Ukraine could push up international food and feed prices by 8 to 22% above their already elevated levels. Speaking to the journalists, Máximo Torero, the chief economist of FAO, noted that prior to the crisis, the agency's food price index has reached a new historical record. Russia and Ukraine are among the most important producers of agricultural commodities in the world. Both countries are net exporters of agricultural products, and they both play leading supply roles in global markets of foodstuffs. According to Torero, nearly 50 countries are dependent on Russia and also Ukraine for at least 30% of the wheat import needs. Of these, 36 countries have over 50% of their wheat imports coming from these two countries. On Wednesday, Asian Americans from the Atlanta area held a rally to speak out against racism, misogyny, and gun violence on the anniversary of shootings that left 8 people dead in that city. 6 women of Asian descent were among the 8 people killed on March 16, 2021. The Zelains contributed to fear and anger among Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders already experienced a rise in hostility and motivated many people to join the fight against it. On stage at the rally, a man struck a gong 8 times in honor of each person killed in the shootings. Bonnie Yun from the Georgia Asian Pacific American Bar Association said she is still processing the killings and hope for a better understanding of the history of Asian Americans in the country.
Yes, the tragedy that happened last year, it really shook our nation. It is our 9/11. But as you can see throughout the pandemic, and even as recently as this past week, the violence continues, especially against Asian American women, with 74% of AAPI women experiencing violence or hate crimes during this past year alone. So how do I feel? You know, I look like the women who were killed last year. I still am processing this, but I'm here because I want to break the silence, and I want to demand institutional changes from both our elected officials and corporations to say that Asian American voices need to be heard.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The World Health Organization stated that the number of COVID-19 positive cases reported worldwide showed an increase of 8% over the last week. During last week, infections of the Omicron variant led to a new uprising of the curve after 35 days of decline. According to a report by the International Health Authority, Europe also showed a rise, but only by 2%, with 4.9 million cases of infection reported. On the American continent, with 887,000 infections, there was a drop of 20%. Now we address other topics. A powerful 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Fukushima in northern Japan on Wednesday, triggering a tsunami advisory or a warning and plunging more than 2 million homes in the Tokyo area into darkness. The region is part of northern Japan that was devastated by a deadly 9.0 quake and tsunami 11 years ago that also caused nuclear plant meltdowns. The Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings, which operates the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, where the cooling systems failed after the 2011 disaster, said that workers were checking for any possible damage. The country's meteorological agency said the quake hit at a depth of 60 kilometers below the sea. The agency issued a tsunami advisory for up to a meter sea surge in parts of Miyagi and Fukushima prefectures. And continuous heavy rain and began on Saturday has triggered flood and disrupted traffic in northern and southeastern parts of Brazil. Downpours lashed the country's most populous city, Sao Paulo, inundating local roads. The city had received 84.4% of the total rainfall expected for the month as of Tuesday, according to statistics from local climate emergency management agency. The heavy rains also caused rivers to overflow, triggering the massive landslides that destroyed many homes. In Iraquera district alone, the landslides caused by heavy rains resulted in at least 2 deaths and many injuries. Local meteorologists confirm the rainfall will continue in the coming week and may cause flooding in more areas. At the interactive dialogue with the special representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children during the 49th session of the Human Rights Council, the Chinese representative expressed concerns over the violation of children's rights in the United States. The Chinese representative stated her country is deeply concerned that the U.S. not only keeps immigrant children in detention centers for a long period of time, which has led to the violence and torture of children, but also forcibly separates them away from their parents. She also emphasized that many children have fallen victim of shootings due to the proliferation of guns in the North American nation. In 2021, more than 44,000 were killed in gun violence, with more than 1,000 of them teenagers and children under the age of 17. China urged the United States to address the problem of gun proliferation and earnestly protect children's rights to life and other rights. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.